The wedding photographer called me at 11 p.m., 3 days after my vow renewal, and when I zoomed in on the photo he sent, I saw my husband kissing my sister 20 minutes before he walked down the aisle to promise me forever. Again. My name is Priya. I'm a cardiac surgeon at Mount Sinai. I've held beating hearts in my hands, made split-second decisions that meant life or death, and I've never once let my hands shake. They shook that night. I'd been married to Derek for 4 years. He was an architect, successful, charming, the kind of man who remembered your coffee order and your mother's birthday. When he suggested we renew our vows, I thought it was romantic, a celebration of us. 60 guests, $15,000 for a photographer named Marcus Webb, white orchids everywhere, and my little sister Simone as my maid of honor. Simone had been living with us for 8 months. She'd lost her job, needed help, and I didn't think twice. That's what sisters do. That's what I believed family meant. When Marcus called, his voice was barely a whisper. He told me he'd been editing the pre-ceremony shots, candid moments he captured while testing the light. There was one taken through a window in the side hallway of my house. I opened the image. Behind a pillar, half hidden but not hidden enough, were Derek and Simone, his hands cradling her face, her fingers gripping his jacket, their mouths pressed together. 20 minutes before I walked toward him in white, I stared at those pixels until my vision blurred. My husband, my sister, the two people I trusted most in this world. And suddenly, every late-night whisper, every closed door, every time they went quiet when I entered a room, it all made a different kind of sense. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat in the dark of my living room, listening to Derek snore upstairs, and I realized something terrifying. If they could hide this from me for so long, what else didn't I know? This is the story of what I found when I started looking. It's a long one. Stick around and follow the stories here because, trust me, you're going to want to hear how it ends. The morning after Marcus sent that photo, I woke up next to Derek like nothing had changed. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work. Called me babe. Said he'd be home late because of a client meeting in Stamford. I smiled. Said I'd leave dinner in the fridge. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I walked to Simone's room. She was still asleep. She rarely woke before 10. I stood in the doorway, watching her breathe, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not rage, not yet. Just clarity. I needed to know how deep this went. That evening, I waited until Derek fell asleep. 3 glasses of wine, like always. He was out by 10:30. I took his phone from the nightstand and went to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. His password was our wedding anniversary. The irony almost made me laugh. I opened his messages and searched for Simone's name. The conversation thread went back 11 months. 11 months of, I love you. 11 months of, when are you going to tell her? 11 months of photos, plans, and promises, all happening under my roof, while I paid for groceries and cooked family dinners and believed I was lucky. But then I saw something that made my stomach drop. A photo of a baby, a little boy with dark curly hair and Derek's exact eyes. The caption read, "Noah misses his daddy." I scrolled faster now, my hands trembling. There were dozens of photos. Noah at the park, Noah in a crib, Noah wearing a onesie that said "Daddy's little man," 14 months old, which meant Simone got pregnant just weeks after she moved in. I did the math 3 times, hoping I was wrong. I wasn't. She conceived that baby in my house, possibly in the guest room I decorated for her myself. There was more. A message from 3 weeks ago where Simone complained about buying diapers. Derek told her to charge them to the household account, the one I funded. I remembered those charges. I thought Simone was donating to a shelter. I was buying diapers for my husband's secret child. But where was Noah now? Simone didn't have a baby here. I found the answer in an older message. "Your mom's been amazing with him. Tell her I said thanks." My mother. My mother was raising my husband's baby in her house in New Hampshire, and no one had told me. I put Derek's phone back on the nightstand. I walked downstairs. I poured myself a glass of water and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the garden where we'd renewed our vows. The white orchids were still there, wilting now. My sister, my husband, my mother. Everyone knew except me. I thought about screaming. I thought about waking them both up and demanding answers. I thought about calling my mother and asking her how she could do this to me. But I didn't, because somewhere between the photo and the messages and the baby, something shifted inside me. The woman who trusted blindly, who believed in the goodness of family, she was gone. And the woman standing in that kitchen, she was already making a plan. I wasn't going to confront them, not yet. I needed to know everything first. Every lie, every dollar, every secret conversation. And then I was going to make sure they never saw it coming. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. During the day, I performed surgeries. I saved lives. I smiled at nurses and answered questions from residents, and no one, not a single person, knew that my entire world had collapsed. At night, I became someone else. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of messages, dates, times. I created a folder on an encrypted drive and named it Tax Documents 2019. Derek would never look there, but I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed help from someone who knew how to dig deeper than I could. A colleague at the hospital had gone through a brutal divorce 2 years ago. Her husband had hidden assets in offshore accounts, and she'd found every single one. When I asked her how, she gave me a name: Dana Morrison, private investigator. Expensive, but worth it. I called Dana that same week. We met at a coffee shop in White Plains, far from anyone who might recognize me. She was calm, direct, no nonsense. I liked her immediately. I told her everything: the photo, the messages, the baby, my mother. She didn't flinch, just took notes and asked questions. "What do you want to know?" she asked. "Everything," I said. "Every lie, every dollar, every plan they've made." She nodded. "Give me 2 weeks." Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work, I came home, I cooked dinner for Derek and Simone, and I watched them exchange glances across the table. And I smiled like I didn't notice. Like I was still the trusting wife and sister they thought I was. Simone even hugged me one night, told me she was grateful for everything I'd done for her. I hugged her back, told her that's what family is for. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. When Dana called me back, she asked me to meet her at her office. She said it would be better if I sat down for this. She was right. The affair had started 13 months ago, just 3 weeks after Simone moved in. Derek had been planning to leave me before the vow renewal, but Simone convinced him to wait. They wanted more time to prepare. Prepare for what? Dana slid a folder across the desk. Inside were bank statements I'd never seen. Derek had opened a joint account with Simone 8 months ago. They'd been transferring money into it every month. Money from our investment fund. My investment fund. The one I'd built from years of bonuses and savings. $63,000? Gone. But that wasn't the worst part. They were planning to buy a house, a 4-bedroom colonial in Vermont, close to where my mother lived, close to Noah. The closing was scheduled for 3 months from now. The plan was simple. Derek would file for divorce, claim we'd grown apart, and walk away with whatever he could get. Then he'd move to Vermont with Simone and their son, and I'd be left with the ruins of a life I thought was real. I stared at those documents until the numbers blurred. $63,000. That was the price of my trust, but the money wasn't what broke me. It was the timeline. They'd been planning this for months. Every kiss, every "I love you," every moment Derek looked into my eyes and told me I was his everything. It was all a performance. A distraction while they emptied my accounts and built a life without me. I drove home that night in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of my own breathing and the hum of the highway. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw the lights on in the living room. Derek and Simone were watching TV together, probably sitting too close, probably holding hands under the blanket. I turned off the engine and sat there in the dark. The old Priya would have cried. The old Priya would have walked in there and begged for an explanation, desperate to understand how the people she loved could do this to her. But the old Priya was dead. And the woman sitting in that car, she wasn't going to beg. She wasn't going to cry. She was going to make them pay for every single lie. The hardest part wasn't knowing. It was pretending I didn't. Every morning, I made coffee for Derek. Every evening, I asked Simone about her day. I laughed at their jokes. I touched Derek's arm when he talked about his projects. I told Simone her hair looked nice. And every night, I added more files to my encrypted folder. Dana had given me a roadmap. She said the key to winning wasn't confrontation. It was patience. Let them think they're safe, she told me. Let them make mistakes. So, I waited. And I watched. It didn't take long for the mistakes to come. One evening, Derek said he had a client dinner in the city. He'd be home late. I kissed him goodbye, told him to have fun. Then I checked our shared calendar, the one he didn't know I still had access to. No client dinner, no meeting, nothing. I pulled up the location sharing on his phone. He'd forgotten to turn it off months ago, and I'd never mentioned it. His little blue dot moved through Manhattan, past his office, past any restaurant he'd ever mentioned. It stopped at a hotel in Midtown. 20 minutes later, Simone said she was meeting a friend for drinks in Greenwich. She'd be back by 10. I smiled, told her to have a good time. Her location dot appeared at the same hotel. I sat in my living room, watching those two dots overlap, and I felt something strange. Not pain, not anymore. Just a cold, focused calm. They thought I was blind. They thought I was busy with work, distracted by surgeries, too trusting to question anything. They had no idea I was building a case. The next week, Derek made his biggest mistake. He needed me to sign some papers. Refinancing documents for a property investment, he said. Standard stuff. He slid them across the kitchen counter while I was cooking, casual, like it was nothing. I didn't sign them. Instead, I smiled and said I wanted to read them first. He looked annoyed for a split second, just a flash. But then he recovered. Said, of course. Take my time. That night, I scanned every page and sent them to my lawyer. The documents would have added my signature to the joint account. The one he'd opened with Simone. The one they were using to buy the Vermont house. If I'd signed, I would have been legally tied to their fraud. When the divorce happened, they could have claimed I knew about the account, that I approved the transfers, that I was complicit. He tried to make me sign my own betrayal. I called Dana the next morning. He's getting sloppy, I told her. Good, she said. That means he's confident. Confident people make the biggest mistakes. She was right, because 2 days later, I found something that changed everything. Derek left his laptop open on his desk. He was in the shower, singing, actually singing, like he didn't have a care in the world. I walked into his office, told myself I'd just glance at the screen. His email was open. There was a message from a real estate agent in Vermont. The subject line read, "Final walkthrough confirmed." I clicked it. The house was beautiful. 4 bedrooms, big backyard, a porch with a swing. The email included photos. In one of them, I could see Simone standing in the kitchen, smiling, her hand on her stomach. Her hand on her stomach. I zoomed in. The way she was standing, the way her fingers spread across her belly. I'd seen that pose before. On pregnancy announcement photos, on mothers-to-be cradling what wasn't yet visible. I checked the date on the email. 3 days ago. 3 days ago, she'd toured their future home. 3 days ago, she'd stood in that kitchen, touching her stomach, while I made her dinner and asked about her day. She was pregnant again. I closed the laptop. I walked out of his office. I stood in the hallway and listened to Derek singing in the shower, completely unaware. He tried to trap me with those documents. He thought I'd sign without reading, like I always did. He thought I was still the trusting wife who believed every word he said. But his arrogance gave me exactly what I needed. Proof that this wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated plan to take everything from me. And now I knew something they didn't. I knew about the house. I knew about the second pregnancy. I knew their entire timeline. They thought they were 3 months away from freedom. They had no idea I was about to tear it all down. I needed to understand why, not just how. I already knew that. The affair, the money, the secret baby, the house in Vermont. I had the facts. But facts don't explain why your sister crawls into your husband's bed. Facts don't explain why your mother hides a grandchild from you for over a year. I needed to know what made them think this was justified. Dana had recorded phone calls between Derek and Simone. Legal in Connecticut, she assured me, as long as one party consented. She'd paid an informant, a mutual acquaintance who Simone trusted, to make certain calls. The things people say when they think they're safe are astonishing. I listened to those recordings alone, in my car, parked at the far end of a hospital parking garage. Simone's voice filled the speakers. She talked about me like I was a problem to be solved. She said I was cold, distant, too focused on my career to be a real wife, a real sister. She said Derek deserved someone who actually prioritized him. Someone warm, someone present, someone like her. I listened to her laugh about the vow renewal. She called it poetic, said it was the perfect cover. Who would suspect anything at an event celebrating love? Derek was worse. He said he'd married the wrong sister. He said I was impressive, sure, but exhausting. Too ambitious, too independent. He wanted someone who needed him, someone softer. He said Simone made him feel like a man. I paused the recording, sat there in silence for a long time. So, that was it. That was the reason. I worked too hard. I achieved too much. I didn't make my husband feel important enough. And my sister, she saw an opportunity. A house in Greenwich, a successful brother-in-law who felt neglected, a chance to take everything I had and convince herself she deserved it. But the recording that broke me wasn't between Derek and Simone. It was between Simone and my mother. Dana had gotten access to it through the informant. It was from 6 months ago, right after Noah was born. Simone was crying. She said she felt guilty. She said maybe they should tell me. And my mother, my own mother, said no. She said I would overreact, that I'd make it about me, that I'd use my money and my lawyers to destroy them. She said Simone deserved happiness, and Derek was clearly unhappy, and sometimes these things happen for a reason. She called me difficult. She said I'd always been difficult, too smart, too intense, too much. And then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Priya will be fine. She always is. She doesn't need anyone." I sat in that parking garage and cried for the first time since this started. Not because of Derek, not because of Simone, because my mother looked at my strength and called it a flaw. She looked at my independence and decided it meant I didn't deserve loyalty. She protected my sister's betrayal because she thought I was too strong to be hurt. As if strength means you don't bleed. I drove home that night with a new understanding. This wasn't just about an affair. It wasn't about money or attraction or opportunity. It was about resentment. They resented me for my career, my success, my ability to stand on my own. And instead of being proud of me, they convinced themselves I didn't need anything, so they could take everything without guilt. They told themselves I'd survive. And they were right. I would. But not the way they imagined. I called my lawyer the next morning. I told him to prepare divorce papers. I told him about the joint account, the transfers, the house in Vermont. I told him about the recordings. He asked me when I wanted to file. "Not yet," I said. "I want to serve him myself, in front of everyone." There was a pause on the line. "Dr. Nakamura," he said carefully, "are you sure that's wise?" I thought about my mother calling me difficult. I thought about Simone laughing at my vow renewal. I thought about Derek saying I was exhausting. "They took everything from me in private," I said. "I want them to lose it all in public. I had the evidence. I had the motive. Now I needed the stage. My lawyer's name was Howard Chen. He'd handled high-profile divorces for surgeons, executives, and one state senator whose husband had embezzled campaign funds. Howard didn't flinch at complicated. He didn't flinch at messy. When I laid out my plan, he raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. He told me the law was on my side. Connecticut was an equitable distribution state, but with documented financial fraud, I could push for much more. The transfers to the joint account were made without my consent. The forged refinancing documents showed intent to deceive. And the recordings, while not admissible in criminal court, painted a clear picture of premeditation. Howard prepared 3 sets of documents: divorce papers, a civil suit for financial fraud, and a formal complaint to the State Architectural Board regarding Derek's misuse of client funds, because Dana had found that too. Derek had been skimming from project budgets for months, funneling money into his Vermont dream. His career was built on a house of cards. I was about to blow it down, but I needed witnesses. Not for the court, for the exposure. I started making calls. My Aunt Gloria, my father's sister, had never liked Derek. She thought he was too smooth, too charming. She'd said so at our wedding, and I dismissed her. Now I called her and told her everything. She didn't say I told you so. She just asked what she could do. I invited her to dinner. A family reconciliation dinner, I called it. I told her to bring my Uncle Ray and my cousin Michelle and anyone else who wanted to come. Then I called Derek's mother. Patricia had always been cold to me, polite but distant, like she was waiting for me to fail. I told her I was planning a surprise dinner for Derek, A celebration of family. I said I wanted to make things right with her, to start fresh. She accepted immediately. She even sounded pleased. I invited Derek's business partner, Tom, and his wife. I invited 2 of Derek's oldest friends from college. I told everyone it was a reconciliation dinner, a chance to bring both families together after years of distance. 12 guests confirmed, plus Derek, Simone, and my mother. 15 people total, 15 witnesses. The dinner was set for Saturday evening. I booked a private room at a restaurant in Greenwich, one with a large screen for presentations. I told the manager I'd be showing a slideshow of family photos. He had no idea what kind of photos. The week before the dinner, I noticed something that confirmed my timing was right. Derek and Simone were fighting. It started small. Tense silences at breakfast, doors closing a little too hard. One night, I heard them arguing in her room, hushed, but heated. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Simone wanted to move faster. She was pregnant again, and she wanted to be in that Vermont house before she started showing. She wanted the divorce filed now, but Derek was stalling. He kept saying they needed more money first, that they should wait until after the holidays, that I might get suspicious if things moved too quickly. He was trying to squeeze more from me before he left, and Simone was getting impatient. The cracks were forming. I watched them snap at each other over small things. Who forgot to buy milk? Who left the lights on? They were stressed. The affair that had seemed so romantic, so exciting, was now suffocating under the weight of secrets and logistics and a timeline that kept slipping. They weren't partners in love. They were partners in crime, and criminals always turn on each other eventually. 3 days before the dinner, I did a final review. The slideshow was ready. 23 slides, starting with happy family photos and ending with screenshots of messages, bank transfers, and the photo that started it all, Derek and Simone kissing behind that pillar. The divorce papers were printed and signed by me. Howard would be waiting in the parking lot with copies. Dana had prepared a summary report, 4 pages, documenting the affair, the fraud, and the conspiracy. I had 15 copies in a folder. My Aunt Gloria would be seated next to my mother. My cousin Michelle would be filming on her phone, just in case anyone tried to rewrite history later. Everything was in place. Friday night, I stood in my closet and picked out my dress. Red. Fitted. The one Derek always said made me look powerful. He had no idea how right he was. I thought about what my mother had said on that recording. That I was difficult, that I didn't need anyone. She was wrong about the first part. I wasn't difficult. I was decisive. But she was right about the second part. I didn't need them. And tomorrow night, they were going to learn what it felt like to need me, when it was far too late. The restaurant had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, white tablecloths, candles, the kind of place where people celebrated anniversaries and promotions and the milestones of a good life. I arrived an hour early to set up. The manager showed me to the private room. I connected my laptop to the screen on the wall and tested the slideshow 3 times. I positioned the folder with Dana's reports under my chair. I checked my phone. Howard was parked outside, waiting. Then I sat at the head of the table and waited for my guests. Derek and Simone arrived together, which wasn't unusual anymore. They'd stopped pretending to come separately. Simone was wearing a loose blouse, the kind that hid a growing belly. She smiled at me and said I looked beautiful. I thanked her, told her she was glowing. My mother came next. She hugged me and said she was glad I was doing this. That family was important, that she was proud of me for being the bigger person. I held her tight and said nothing. Derek's mother, Patricia, arrived with her husband, then his business partner, Tom, and his college friends, and my Aunt Gloria with my uncle and cousin, Michelle. 15 people seated around a long table, making small talk, sipping wine, completely unaware. I stood up and clinked my glass. I thanked everyone for coming. I said this dinner was about truth, about family, about the things we hide and the things we reveal. Derek smiled at me. He looked relaxed, confident. He probably thought this was exactly what it appeared to be, a naive wife trying to bring everyone together. I clicked the remote. The first slide was a photo from our wedding. Derek and me, young and hopeful, cutting the cake. A few people made soft sounds of nostalgia. The second slide was from our vow renewal. The white orchids, the garden, me in my dress, radiant and trusting. The third slide was the photo Marcus had sent me, Derek and Simone, kissing, his hands on her face, her fingers gripping his jacket. 20 minutes before the ceremony. The room went silent. I heard someone gasp. I think it was Patricia. I didn't stop. The fourth slide was a screenshot of their messages. I love you. When are you going to tell her? I can't wait to start our life together. The fifth slide was a photo of Noah, Derek's eyes, Simone's smile, 14 months old. Sixth slide, the birth certificate, father, Derek Nakamura. Jean-Baptiste. Seventh slide, bank statements, the joint account, $63,000 transferred from my investment fund. Eighth slide, the house in Vermont, 4 bedrooms, the email confirming the final walkthrough, a photo of Simone in the kitchen, hand on her stomach. Ninth slide, the forged refinancing documents, my signature line waiting to be filled. 10th slide, a summary of Derek's financial fraud at his firm, client funds diverted to personal accounts. I stopped clicking. Derek was pale. His mouth was open, but nothing came out. Simone had her hand over her mouth, her eyes darting around the room like she was looking for an exit. My mother was crying. I reached under my chair and pulled out the folder. I handed a copy of Dana's report to Patricia first, then to Tom, then to Derek's college friends. I told them they could read the details later. 4 pages, everything documented. Every lie, every dollar, every plan. Then I looked at Derek. I told him there was a man in the parking lot with divorce papers. I told him he could sign them tonight or wait for the court date. But either way, this marriage was over. I told him I knew about the state architectural board and that a formal complaint had already been filed. I told him his clients would know by Monday. He started to speak, but I held up my hand. I wasn't finished. I turned to Simone. I told her she had 48 hours to move out of my house. I told her the locks would be changed on Monday morning. I turned to my mother. I told her I knew she'd been hiding Noah. I told her I'd heard the recording, the one where she called me difficult, where she said I didn't need anyone. I told her she was right. I didn't need her. Not anymore. Then I picked up my purse, thanked the restaurant manager, and walked out. Behind me, I heard chaos, voices overlapping, someone calling my name. I didn't turn around. The night air was cool on my face. Howard was leaning against his car, holding a folder. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was better than okay. I told him I was free. But even as I said it, I knew the hardest part wasn't over yet, because tomorrow I'd have to wake up and figure out who I was without them. The divorce was finalized in 3 months. Howard was ruthless. With the documented fraud, the forged documents, and the evidence of premeditation, Derek didn't stand a chance. His lawyer tried to negotiate, but there was nothing to negotiate. I had everything. I kept the house in Greenwich. I kept my investments, what was left of them, plus full restitution for what they'd stolen. I received a settlement that made Derek's accountant cry. But money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was watching Derek's world collapse. The complaint to the architectural board triggered an investigation. Within 6 weeks, 3 of his clients had filed lawsuits. His business partner Tom dissolved their partnership and issued a public statement distancing himself from any wrongdoing. By the end of the 2nd month, Derek's firm was finished. The story spread through Greenwich like wildfire. At charity events and country club dinners, people whispered about the architect who'd stolen from his wife and his clients, who'd fathered a secret child with his sister-in-law, who'd been exposed at a dinner party in front of his own mother. Nobody wanted to work with him. Nobody wanted to be seen with him. Last I heard, he'd moved to Vermont after all, but not to the 4-bedroom colonial with the porch swing, to a rental apartment outside Burlington, working for a small firm that didn't Google his name before hiring him. Simone went with him. She had the baby in March. A girl this time. She sent me a message after the birth, asking if we could talk, asking if I could find it in my heart to forgive her. I deleted it without responding. Some people think forgiveness means letting someone back into your life. But forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about releasing the weight so you can move forward. I forgave Simone the way you forgive a stranger who rear-ends your car. I acknowledged what happened, I processed it, and I let it go. But that doesn't mean I want her in my passenger seat ever again. My mother was harder. She called me every day for 2 weeks after the dinner. She left voicemails full of apologies and explanations and tears. She said she was sorry. She said she'd made a terrible mistake. She said she was my mother and she loved me. I listened to every message, and then I deleted them. On the 15th day, I picked up. I told her I needed time. I told her what she'd done wasn't just a mistake, it was a choice. A choice she made over and over again for more than a year. A choice to protect Simone and betray me. I told her maybe one day I'd be ready to talk. But not now. And maybe not ever. She cried. She begged. I hung up. That was 8 months ago. I haven't spoken to her since. People ask me if I'm lonely, if I miss having a family. The truth is, I have a family. It's just not the one I was born into. My Aunt Gloria calls me every Sunday. My cousin Michelle flew in from Chicago for my birthday and stayed a whole week. Howard and his wife invited me to their Thanksgiving, and I laughed more that night than I had in years. I've started seeing someone. His name is James. He's a pediatric surgeon at Mount Sinai. We'd worked together for years, but never really talked until one night when we both ended up in the cafeteria at 2 a.m. after back-to-back surgeries. He knows everything. I told him on our 3rd date the whole story, and he listened without interrupting. When I finished, he didn't tell me I was strong or brave or inspiring. He just asked if I wanted another glass of wine. I knew right then he was different. We're taking it slow. I'm not ready to trust completely, not yet. But I'm learning. Day by day, I'm learning that not everyone leaves. Not everyone lies. Last month, I was promoted to Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery, the youngest in Mount Sinai's history. The ceremony was small, just the department heads and a few colleagues. But when they handed me the plaque, I thought about everything I'd lost to get here. And I realized I hadn't lost anything. I'd just finally seen the truth. My mother said I didn't need anyone. She meant it as a criticism, but she was almost right. I don't need people who see my strength as a threat. I don't need people who confuse my independence with invulnerability. But I do need people. The right people. The ones who show up not because they need something from me, but because they want to stand beside me. I spent my whole life building a career, a home, a marriage. I thought I was building a future, but the real future started the night I walked out of that restaurant. It started when I stopped being the woman they wanted me to be and became the woman I actually am. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. This story wasn't easy to tell, but it was necessary. If any of this resonated with you, if you've ever been betrayed by people you trusted, if you've ever had to rebuild from nothing, I want you to know something. You're not difficult. You're not too much. You're just not for everyone. And that's okay. Leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I want to know who's out there, who made it through this story with me. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, subscribe to the channel. There are more to come. This is Priya, signing off. But not disappearing. Never again.